What's happening, guys? It's the Wandering Hermit back again. Just wanted to do a video today on the idea of what is sacred and what is mundane, because I've been having a couple of discussions lately with fellow practitioners and just people in general about what it is regarded as truly sacred. Now, I think I wrote an article a while back about how the word sacred has kind of lost its meaning over the generations. But at the time, I was stuck in this very sort of spirit-centric mindset. The whole idea that the physical world wasn't quite as important somehow. I've since come to a realization that the mundane world, as we call it, the physical world, is equally, if not more important to the grand scheme of things than the spirit world. Now, a lot of people probably look at that, take that as I'm disregarding the spiritual. I'm not. I'm saying that the physical world is the vehicle through which the spiritual world operates. And therefore it is just as important as the spiritual world. So, I just want to think about what we regard as sacred. Now, in paganism, typically it's regarded that nature itself is sacred. So it is the physical world, but nature takes the priority. So we're looking at, natural environments, we're looking at trees, we're looking at rivers, we're looking at, the animal life. Whereas we seem to detach human beings and the human world from nature, and therefore this dichotomy even within some pagan movements, not all, but some pagan movements, see the natural world as sacred and the human world as mundane. And some even go so far as to suggest that the human world and human presence in nature is somehow beyond nature and against nature, and therefore not only is it mundane, but it's actually sacrilegious almost for humans to actually be on this earth and to be doing what we're doing. Now, whilst I agree that humanity's effect on the physical world is, or has been up to this point, largely detrimental, I also understand that any species that evolves to the extent that we have would likely do the same thing. It is unfortunately a natural outgrowth from evolution of a species with consciousness. It's going to happen. We are going through the growing pains of ascending into higher consciousness. We're starting to pull out of that. There are vast swathes of the human population that acknowledge that we are damaging sacred nature. And we're starting to make efforts to restore that through, like renewable energy and conservation and other such things. So, because of that, because the fact that humans are learning from our mistakes and we're trying to correct them, that is a sign to me that we haven't necessarily deviated from nature, that we are actually existing still as part of nature, and that this destructive phase that we're going through is just another stage in natural evolution. Therefore, I would see human beings and the human world as equally sacred as the natural world. Now, outside of paganism, for example, the Abrahamic traditions, they regard certain places as sacred, or certain texts as sacred, or certain acts as sacred acts. But there is no clear definition as to what sacred is. Now, sacred as a word has a clear etymological root in ancient Mesopotamian dialects, and it pertains to that which is irreplaceable, that which is somehow transcendent to everything else. Now, as I say, the use of the word has been changed over many, many generations, and therefore its value has decreased because of the way that we've misused it, or just the context in which we use it now. But to me, that doesn't actually lessen the idea of what sacred is, even in the modern context of the word. So, if you're trying to distinguish the sacred world from the mundane world, I personally think that the two are inseparable. They are actually one and the same thing. I think the mundane is sacred. I mean, even in the Norse tradition, if you look at the world tree Yggdrasil, Midgard's right in the centre. Why is that? Because it's the heart of the world tree. The physical world of man is the heart of the world in that sort of paradigm, you could say. Therefore, I take that as saying that, yeah, Midgard is a sacred world on Yggdrasil just like all the others. Why is our world any less important than any other? So, I'm all for trying to make this world as good as it possibly can be. And I'm all for experiencing as much of the physical world as I possibly can. So, and now I'm thinking about bringing the sacred into mundane life. Because again, there are differences in perception and contextual use of the words sacred and mundane when it comes to the way we live and just everyday life. We regard that as mundane life, and our spiritual practice we regard as the sacred life, or the spiritual life. I'm thinking that to demonstrate that the mundane is just as sacred as the spiritual, I like to try to bring spirituality and magic into my daily practice. That's something that I've not been doing these last few years. I have had this clear distinction between my everyday life and my life as a spiritual person, and I kept the two very, very separate. I'm starting to regret that decision, and I'm finding myself increasingly open to telling other people all about the fact that I'm a spiritual person, and that I do practice magic, and that I do revere the old gods, and that I do have certain beliefs and practices which differ from those who live what we regard as mundane lives. And around the time that I started being open about that, I also started to incorporate little bits of spirituality into my everyday practice. So here's a prime example. When I get up every morning, I make a point of making the bed again. I mean, I went through so many years of not bothering to do it, because it's like, oh well, I'm only going to fall back into it later at the end of a bloody annoying, boring, difficult day anyway. So what's the point? Since I've taken up the decision to make a point of making the bed every day, I found that I've started to manifest things into my life that I didn't expect, that are really beneficial to me. I think that's as a direct result of making a mundane act a sacred one, because it is important to me now to get that done. It's almost like a morning ritual. I'll get up, I'll make the bed, and then I'll go and do other things. Now I've started to make a point of my morning cup of tea. I'll go outside and I will make libation with my tea and my breakfast. Even if it's raining, even if it's frozen like it is now. We've had pretty severe snow these last 3 or 4 days because of the Siberian storm that's come over. So we've been whited out. The ground's been frozen solid, and yet I go out and I give libation of the morning. That makes my breakfast a sacred time. Even though it's just something that I'm doing now, it's becoming second nature. When I do my ironing, the water that I put into my iron, I'll bless that. I'll try to cleanse that water. I'll thank it. So that when it goes through the iron and comes out steam, and it's ironing my clothes, I'm imbuing my clothes with that blessing. I'm imbuing my clothes with that energy and that intention that I've put in. When I'm cooking, I found recently it's actually completely unintentional, but I noticed it a couple of days ago. When I'm stirring my food, if I feel that the energy of my home is a bit stagnant, or people feel a little bit down in the dumps or whatever, I put certain herbs in there. I've been putting sage in there to clear away negativity, and rosemary, because they're both just as good for the same thing. I've been putting rosemary and thyme in there, even in foods where it's not usually used, but I do that to, you know, bring a bit of joy and a bit of luck, a bit of positive energy, and it seems to be working. And when I put the herbs in there, if I'm trying to invoke a positive mood, I will stir clockwise. Or if I feel that there is an external cause, like a negative energy that's sort of seeped in and latched on, and I want to banish that, I stir counterclockwise. And I didn't, as I say, I didn't notice for a long time that I've been doing that. I noticed it a couple of days ago. So that's just another example as to how we can bring magical practice into the mundane life to make the mundane sacred, even though they are one and the same anyway. I think these little tiny things that we can do really highlight to us that there is divinity everywhere, that there is magic in everything that we do. Even just breathing, the intake of breath and the exhalation of breath is a sacred act. Because if you look at all of the oldest traditions, they all talk about the breath of God and everything else, and breathing life into things. The whole point of that is to demonstrate that breathing is a sacred practice, or simply being alive is a sacred practice. The fact that I'm making this video could be regarded as a sacred practice, because what am I doing other than sharing my experience with people and hoping that, you know, if other people are, you know, a little bit lost on the path, or if they are just looking for ideas of what to do on the path, or if they feel that their mundane life is just that, mundane, then yeah, maybe this will give you an idea as to how to imbue that with a little bit of magic. Another thing that I think really helps is creating a sacred space in your home, or several sacred spaces if you prefer. For example, I've already done a short video on my YouTube channel, confusing it with Facebook, guiding you through my bedside altar, which I have right here. You probably see the little wisps of smoke coming up there from my incense. Just got some mugwort burning there. That space being right next to me is very comforting, because every morning when I wake up, I look at that and know that I am still who I am, and that altar still resonates with me. If I wake up one morning and there's something off with it, then it hits me instantly, and I know that I can change that. And once I change it, I know that that altar is a reflection of who I am. So having that right next to my bed is a constant reminder that I am a spiritual person on a spiritual path, and I am a spiritual being having a physical experience. Other than that, in my living room, even hell on the landing, in the hallway, we've got areas set up devoted to just certain types of crystals. We'll have arrangements of crystals, we'll have idols there, we'll have pictures there. We've got a little corner in the living space devoted to our ancestors who've passed. And I think that makes a mundane space a little bit more special. And as I say, it's just simple things. Decorating in a certain way, using certain colours that resonate with you. Painting a room a certain colour, for example, or using, you know, certain coloured bed covers or curtains. You know, we've got the red curtains here. But again, that's for empowerment, for creativity, because this room for us is a creative space. This is where we do our journaling. This is where we, you know, sit and watch our study videos. This is where we, you know, write our stories and such things. So the red curtains for the creative energy is really, you know, apt for us. At the same time, we've got the black wallpaper, because black absorbs all colours of the light spectrum. It's a magnet for energy. And I think we've unconsciously chosen those colours because that is what we want this room to be, a creative space. And so I think it really helps to create a sacred space in your home, even if it's not an altar, even if it's not a crystal arrangement. It could be an artistic space if you are the type of person that likes to draw or to paint or to sculpt things or whatever. It's a really good idea to have a space in your home dedicated solely to that, because it's a place where you can go when the world around you is just interfering and getting you down. It's a place where you can actually go and sit and be with yourself, with your creative energy, with your most authentic being, and just relax and feel safe and feel at home. And also, that is the conduit through which you can manifest who you are as a person out into the world through your creations. I mean, I'm rather a creative person anyway. I'm very, very much into music. I play a good number of instruments to a rudimentary degree. I say to an acceptable degree. I like to sketch. I'm currently writing a novel. I write poetry occasionally. You may see that on my Facebook page, The Wandering Hermit. You know, I've recently got into the idea of making things. I've started wood whittling. I'm in the process of making my first short bow, for example, just as an example, you know, just to prove that I can, basically, prove to myself that I can. I've started rune work. I've started doing pyrography, wood burning. All of these little ideas that I have whizzing around in my head. I've got my space to try and do that. At the moment, my space is right in the middle of the average living space. So it does get cluttered, it gets interfered with, and I have to keep rearranging it. And it's, even though it is my space, it's not designated solely for that purpose of creation and meditation and rumination and just, you know, relaxation. And that's what I'm currently working to achieve. There is space in this house for me to create that designated area. But at the moment, it's got other stuff in there that needs to be moved out. Things need to be rearranged. There is a lot that we need to throw away. That's another thing. When you're creating a sacred space, it's good to really take stock of what you want and what you need and what you use, and separate that from what you no longer use, what you no longer need, and being honest, I mean really quite brutally honest with the self, what you no longer want anymore, what you no longer have an attachment to. And once you're able to clear all of that detritus away, you create space for new abundance to come into your life. So by clearing away all of that clutter and creating this space, I am in turn inviting that creative energy to come in and manifest itself through me. And it's a very, very powerful thing. Cleaning house is a very powerful form of magic. It's seemingly a very mundane thing that everybody seems to do at some point in their life, but it's a very, very powerful magical practice, which I would encourage anybody to undertake on a regular basis. So it's coming up to 20 minutes again. I always do this. I ramble for 20 minutes. Probably bore the living daylights out here, but still, I'll wrap it up here. I hope that demonstrates to you guys that, at least in my worldview, the mundane world is as sacred as the spirit world. In fact, the two bleed together and are intricately intertwined in the web of weird. And if we can all understand that and we can all appreciate that, then maybe together we'll start to move forward as a species and as a civilization to make this world a better place. So until my next video, I wish you all much love and many blessings. May your gods be with you. Bye for now.